Hello, welcome back to the channel. So for part 2 of this build for the T34 85, which is the Academy kit in an Airfix box, we're carrying on from the painting of the tracks. So I've just put these down onto a piece of cardboard with some double-sided tape just to hold them there, tack them there really, and sprayed everything in XF85 rubber black from Tamiya. Just checking the links here for the ejector pin marks, and they are, you can't see anything, so it's all gone, so that worked quite well. And just showing the level of detail across the tracks, which is pretty good for link and length tracks. Once we've opened up the holes and sanded a bit of the seam lines back, it all works pretty well. So then for the main colour, I'm going to use Mr. Colour 511, which is their 4BO Russian Green. Quite a new colour, came out a few months back into 2020. And I've got my trusty wheel mask here as well. And spot the error. That is what I've chosen, thinking that that's what the rubber was. But the rubber on the tyres is actually further out. No, further in, I believe. So you'll see when we get to the wheels in a minute. I got that a bit wrong. So just putting on the Mr. Colour 4BO here onto the turret. Now you can see the cast texture coming through quite nicely, and all is looking well. And this is just, because it's a matte colour, I've used rapid thinner as well. So here, on the front of the wheels, I've got it green going out on those lines that are going around the circumference of the wheel, and they're actually meant to be black, so the rim is further in. I do try and hand paint that later. Shared it on a Facebook group and someone pointed it out, which is fine. It's good to know these things. I don't mind that sort of thing. So as long as I've got time to correct it, it's always useful to learn these things one way or another. So now just getting the wheels on, I do line these up with a steel ruler. I'm trying to get the wheels level, and it's a pretty good job. Here you can see where I'm painting up the difference. You've got the nice wheel rim that we did on the right hand side, and there you can see these bits here are actually meant to be rubber as well. When you look at the real vehicles, you'll see that it is the case. So all I do here is just with some thinned down rubber black, the same colour paint, I just fill in those sort of squares and let it run around, and then pick it back out on the rim if it goes over the rim with the 4BO colour. And I know this is almost pointless because we've already painted them, but yeah, we've got to try and get things correct, I think, if we can. And there we go, that's good enough. This is going to be a bit of a muddy vehicle anyway, so we can not worry too much about the finish there. And there you can see I've got one side of tracks on. Now, I would like to say that these were brilliant link and length tracks, worked really well, etc, etc. Unfortunately, they're too long, and unlike other vehicles, we can't adjust anything. We can't adjust the idler or the sprocket, move it further out to take up the slack. So, I mean, I don't understand how this has happened, really. Obviously, something's not right. Either the tracks are too big, I doubt it, they look fine to me. The wheel spacing on the hole is probably not quite right. From Academy, this is. Because there's no way it's fixed when you place it on. You can't actually get it wrong or make it too far away. So as you can see, I'm just gluing up here. This is the problem you have with extra thin using tracks. It's better to use a thicker glue. You see the mess I'm sort of making of it. You just got to let them sit up, but the glue almost doesn't have enough to bind to it. So this is just testing them. Got all the tracks on now with the spare links going around the idler and the sprocket, and you'll start to see that it just doesn't sit right. And that's because one link is about half a link width too much. And as I say, if you could swing out the idler at the front a little bit, that would take it up and it would be fine, but there's no adjustment. So the only way I could really come up with it is by trimming one of the links, and you don't really notice it, to be honest. So what I've decided is to do it down at the sprocket. So I've worked all the way forward to the idler from the bottom run, back along on the top run, got to this point, got everywhere tight, and there you see the overlap. So we're happy around the front, happy around the back, and where it's overlapping there, we're just going to have to cut a little bit off. As you can see, I've taken the sprocket off, and now we can push the sprocket in, bend it around, and then glue those cut links together. And that's about the best of it, I think. We'll have to hope for the best there. So there you can see, just with a bit of super glue to hold that, and then you can put extra thin down through it to give it a slower gluing. It'll bond over time then, but the super glue will hold it. So there we go. I mean, that's about as good as we can hope for, I'm afraid. So now on to the ice cleats, which we've got on the side fenders. So I'm just going to make some tie downs out of thin Tamiya tape. As you can see, you can actually buy it this thickness, but I've cut this on an Infinity board from thicker tape. But it's about 1 mil width. And not trying to be too over the top, you know, it just wants to be a tie down. I'm not worrying about buckles and anything. I'm chucking the 3 cleats in there and then just tying them down and then painting it in with a kind of fabric colour. I think I use the khaki colour from Tamiya. And that's effective. So next thing, I was going to put a load of tank riders on this, and I had yet more problems because the tank rider set I bought, I should have bought the other set. There's a newer set from where I bought it from. I won't mention the manufacturer, but I bought one of the older sets. It comes with a tank commander, and there was no way they fitted on a T34. There was just nowhere where they'd actually sit. So what I've got to do there is spray the hatch from the inside. Now, deviating a little bit from the beginners series, in air quotations, what I'm doing here is a Manchurian vehicle, hopefully. I'm sort of doing a nod to it. I couldn't find any pictures, certainly not of 112 Factory vehicles. So I've just kind of gone for it. No one seemed to know in the groups where the experts are, where I asked. So I've just gone to my Cricut machine and just printed 562 in a kind of vague way that it may have been done. So that's not a beginner's technique, and it's quite an advanced technique. So there are videos on the channel, and as we go forward I may talk about this as well, cutting your own masks, but obviously I don't expect anyone to be doing this. But anyone that's bought this kit would probably be using the decals, so just this is the point to put the decals on, really. So this is my attempt, and it's quite good. So what you've got to do with these masks, you can buy pre-cut masks. So you can do it two ways. You can do reverse masking. So you could have put the actual 562 on there, sprayed it white, then put the 562 on there, and then sprayed it green. But we're going back the other way. So this is, you need to level up your actual template that you've got there. Put the centre of the 6 in, obviously, and then mask off the wider area and spray it in white. And obviously there's nothing beats painted on markings. You just can't get decals to show like it. So with that done, we're now all of the parts are now glued onto the vehicle, all of the small areas after they've been painted, and we're at the rear deck here. And now you can see the exhausts are on. And it's time to begin the weathering. So just with a pin wash at the minute, we're running around with a dark brown pin wash from Oils, and just trying to pick out all of the raised areas. Now this is a little bit messy, but it's not a problem. Doesn't matter. It's quite difficult sometimes with different colours. So if you've got like a desert yellow or a dark yellow like you get on German armour, that's really easy to get a good contrast. If you use a dark brown wash, it just pops. It looks brilliant. When you've got a dark green, it's difficult to know where to come at it from. what colour to use. And what you're trying to do is get contrast, and it's the same with Panzer Grey and other dark muted colours. It's quite difficult to work out what works with it. So I try a number of different colours here, starting off with the browns, and then I do mix in some greens as well, and just go through it like that to try and work out what works. And I think from memory, I think adding a bit of a black dark wash to the recesses, and then using a kind of greeny brown, darker green brown wash on some of the larger greener areas, it tends to give it a bit of a lift. So that's what I do here. Then we're down onto the running gear, and that's just a dark wash just to highlight some of the raised areas. And then with a dark brown wash, I've gone all over those tracks just for an initial coat. What I haven't mentioned here, you can see there that light on the side of the hull. You get just a piece of plastic for the lens, and I didn't film it. What I've done is just found a larger lens from an old vehicle, and I've sanded it down and rounded it off so it fits into this one. So it does give it a clear lens, but again, another poor point from Academy to just put a basic plastic lens in. So there you can see now we're going in with a second wash over the tracks, bit of a darker brown, and now we're into it. So this is where I thought I'd try something a little bit different. After getting the initial wash on the hull of the vehicle, and the turrets obviously had the same, but there's more going on the hull, I thought, well, let's get some thinners in. So this is the oil thinners, this is odourless thinners, and I've added some pigments in. So starting off with that Humbrol weathering powder, the pigment, quite dark. I'm just going to dab this in and around the wheels. The reference was showing quite muddy vehicles as they were going down into China, churning up and getting covered in it, but quite clean on top, to be honest. A lot of these vehicles are generally, I know people love chipping and battering vehicles to death, but I've got to be honest, I know you can find pictures of really beat up vehicles, but of all the ones I look at, I find more and more of it are relatively clean, with just, they don't tend to have battered fenders or anything like that. They tend to just look like a vehicle that's been running around for a couple of months. They're just muddy and got a lot of patina on them. They got a lot of footprints and wear areas, but I certainly don't see chipping or anything like that. But I get the point that it makes for a nice looking model. So maybe something we'll look at when we get further down the line. So just adding on these pigments, it's basically it's not what it looks like. It looks like I'm just slavering this on. Again, it's placement. I'm putting it in areas where it needs to be and not putting it in other areas. But when we are putting it on where we want it, at this initial stage, I am sort of plastering it on, just trying to get it into the nooks and the crannies, just knowing that being pigments and being only held there by the thinners, that it will we'll be able to get it off from where we don't want it. So it's not too much of a worry. So once that's all applied, I've gone on and just thinned it down a little bit more with some thinners, just to try and make it kind of look how I want it, and then just add a bit of actual just pigments on. So we've got that initial mix that's gone on and done the work in most of the areas. Then I've thinned it away around where it looks a bit too heavy, and now I'm just putting bits on, as you can see, just plastering it on. And it looks a right mess, and it is a right mess. That's kitchen towel I got down there, and it's just absolutely covered. So you want to make sure you've got, good protection down on the bench. It does get dusty. It is a bit of a pain. If you're using it dry, you might want to think about putting your face mask on with some filters, because it does get a bit dusty, especially in a small room. So once that's on, it's I thought, right, we'll try a bit more of a reddish colour as well. So I've mixed it up a bit. We've put a few different colours in. So you've got African earth and European dust, mixing those two together, which gives us a kind of reddish colour. And once it's dry, that's the effect you get, which I think is pretty good. pretty good indeed. Now, it can be added to, which is what we're going to do. And we want to get a kind of natural look to the wheel. So we've got to think about what's happening. The mud's going around the side, it's getting into the centre of the wheel and being pushed out up the side of the wheel. So once we've got the initial layer down, I'm now going back over with that reddish brown colour. So this is just to add another layer, and it will add to the difference. So at the minute we've got, you know, a nice earthy brown. Now we put this reddish colour in, it will just give it an extra layer. And the thing with all of this, when you see some quite famous models around, it tends to boil down to spending time and adding layers. There doesn't seem to be any dark art, any magic, any one thing that makes one person able to do something that another person isn't able to. It just boils down to, if you spent 6 months on one build and you took your time, and every process you did, you just add layers and layers and layers and layers and made it work, you're going to get a very, very good effect. Now, we're only just doing a tiny bit here. This is a drop in the ocean. This is nothing like top level work what I'm doing here, but it's just showing you the basics of how to try and push yourself to the next level, I suppose. And that does not mean that this is the next level. This just means that if you apply some of these techniques and keep adding to it and think, right, well, I might try this, I might try that. You know, I'm going to spend just a month on the running gear of a tank. You know, it's going to be really pretty good towards the end of it. But not everyone can do that. Not everyone wants to model like that. So there's numerous ways you can go about things. But certainly there is no shortcut for time. And you know, I certainly think if you built sort of 5 models a year compared to, you know, 50, the 5 are going to be much better looking. But each to their own. So now, as we're saying how great this looks, it's not looking that great at the minute, is it? It's this is that sort of hold your breath kind of moment when you think, right, I've ruined it. But I cannot stress enough, you just got to let these things dry, and you'll see the effect. You can already see it there on the underside of the front plate there. So what I'm doing is just running this in. You can already see where some of the initial pigment colour is collected. Now I'm going in with that reddish colour. I'm just picking out areas where it may splash up and get caught. Just gently. This is the heavy pigment mix. We're going all up around the sides, you know, everywhere it needs to be, up around the back of the fender, all up the back there as well, where it's going to be kicked up. If you think it gets kind of stuck in and levels out down the back end, as it were, if it starts getting dug in at the back, all that mud's going to flick up over the back as it tries to pull itself out of an area that's been heavily churned up. When these pigments dry, they are completely different, and they look really, really good. My advice would be, do this, pop it to one side, leave it for a couple days, up to a week, something like that, then come back and have a look and see what you think of it. So with that said, here we are a week later, and you can see, not great, not perfect, but what we do now is what really brings this to life. So as I said, it's pigments. They're fixed, but if you rub them, they come off. So using a dry brush, my hand is in the way, I'm afraid, but just thinking about where this mud's going to go as the wheels run, we just remove the pigment from certain areas. We just brush it away, and then with the airbrush, you blast it out, and there you go. You can start to see it gives it a real effect now. Where it's just blobbed on, it's a bit like, right, okay, yeah, it's muddy, we get it. But when you start brushing this away and brushing it around, you can really start to manipulate things, and it will collect around some of the bolts, and it will rub away from other bits of the bolts. It will go up the side, and that's what you want to do. You want to just keep working it until it starts to look very, very natural. And you'll know when it looks natural because your eyes will see it. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but you will just know. It will look like a muddy wheel. It sounds silly, I know, but trust me, if you have a go at it, you'll get there. I think it's a good technique. It's only one I sort of stumbled on. This isn't anything I've read anywhere or anything. I just thought, right, let's just bang some pigments in, some some thinners, see what happens. I thought it was going to make it stick on there and we might be able to work it back. Now, I've also gone on with some dry pigments just around parts of the hole and just kicked it up and blended in the areas where we actually sprayed it on. You can now see the 562 on the turret. The turret is on. You can see we finished the brushing out of the pigments in the wheels. So now we're just working on the turret, and what we're going to do here is go around and putting in some panel lines, some washes, and just trying to pick out a few areas. I've just realised at this point I seem to have mislaid the footage for the rear deck. Now what I did there is when we had the wet pigment going on the wheels, when we got round the back, I just used a cocktail stick and the same wet pigment on the brush and just flicked it all up the back. I don't know where that bit of footage has gone, so I apologise for that. There's a few things I've done off camera. So I've put in the tow cable, I've put it around the front towing hook, and just found somewhere around the back for it to go into. So we've put that on. You get the two types in this. You get the late war and the World War II version. I am hopefully right in using the correct one here. So you get the two types of ends for the towing cable. And what we really do here is just using some of the MIG enamel washes, and we're just basically putting runs, we're putting some rain marks, some washes and panel lines all around the turret, and just trying to blend that in now to the lower hull, the hull even, and just bring it all together so they don't look like two separate parts. Picking out certain areas which are going to look right, and just, you know, generally blending it in. So just looking now at the effect we're left with. So this is what the model looks like. This is it finished. We don't add any more here. You can see the clear lens on the light on the right hand side of the hole there. And I've gone around and just used some of the grease stains from MIG and put them around the wheels to cut through some of that dry mud, that dry pigment. I've used a few other different washes just in areas just to give kind of splodges of whatever. I mean, this is what we've seen in the reference, to be honest. It was just blobs of, I guess, oil and grease all over the place, and it notably cuts through the dry the dry mud that's on the tank. It's quite interesting, and I think it's pretty good. We've got dust going up the side of the turret, and then the rain marks are cutting through it, so I'm really quite happy with it. I think for the first model in this series to try and step it up a gear, I think this is going in a good direction. The next model will really take it on again, and we're going to start having a look at interiors. So that is going to be a German half-track, so that's the 2519, the one with the cannon in it. So that will be beginning next week. I think that's going to be a two-parter again. So as always, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, do consider subscribing to the channel. Give the video a like. Let me know your comments down below. If you haven't already, do follow the playlist that this is part of. This is an ongoing series. the Beginner's Guide to Armour Modelling. If you'd like to help out the channel, there's a couple ways you can do that, following links down below in the description box. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.